I'm Stephanie Kaza, the tubist from Calypsis. I'm here with Jessica Pierce, our horn player, and we are here talking to Zoe Cutler, composer of one of our favorite brass quintet pieces that we have played and recorded so far, Fanfare for Some Bad Bitches. So, Zoe, I would like to ask you now about really what you're up to these days. What is life like for you right now? I know that you are based in Detroit and a little bit about what you're doing, but maybe you could tell us kind of what is going on in your life these days.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Al. Yeah, I'm living in Detroit. I am writing some music. I went to school for trombone performance, which I'm doing a very small amount of these days. So I think composition has been my main outlet. And then, in my free time, I work full time at the Apple Developer Academy in downtown Detroit, which is like I mentor adult learners in coding. So that's kind of my little side project full-time job to pay the bills while I'm a very, very serious composer making a very, very lot of money.
Love that. I do wonder, is there any crossover or parallel between like the coding side of things, that world, and the composer side of things?
Yes, absolutely. Several of my colleagues who are also coding mentors went to music school as well. So I think that kind of speaks for itself. We have a pretty, and many of our students are also musicians, so there's a lot of overlap. It's kind of like a fun mathy kind of thing to I feel like to play music and to compose and to code.
That's interesting. I was excited because I saw you went to Michigan for your master's. I went there. When did you graduate from Michigan?
I got my master's in 2020. Really awesome time to get your master's. And I actually don't mean that too sarcastically because the next year, then everybody had to go to school and do virtual classes, and for us, everything was just canceled. We just got to hang out. So
Very true. Yeah, I know it probably was tough maybe to not get to do like a recital or something like that. But I think you've made the most of it, so that's good.
yeah, I actually ended up doing a lot of like YouTube multi-track projects. So it's kind of more fun than for me at least than doing kind of a standard classical recital to get to have that creative outlet and record some of the music I'd been writing.
Speaking of pieces you've written, we were wondering what was some of your inspiration for writing Fanfare for Some Bad Bitches?
Right, yeah. So of course, Fanfare for the Common Man is kind of like the historical piece that started the inspiration. And then Joan Tower wrote a response called Fanfare for the Uncommon Woman. And respect. I think there's maybe six of them, six fanfares for the Uncommon Woman, and they're awesome. I just felt like I wanted to enhance that title a little bit, like as much as I am an uncommon woman, I also aspire to be a bad bitch. So I thought that it would be important to um, kind of reflect that and make something that's a little more badass to add to the repertoire.
As far as your process goes, we're kind of seeing the end result of this piece, but I guess my curiosity is about your process for actually putting it together. Do you start with the trombone in mind, or do you kind of have a texture in mind, or a vibe, or or something like that? And how does something like this take shape? Because the end result is quite complex. So, yeah, maybe just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think this piece had an interesting process. So around the time that I was writing this, I was listening a lot to the Bjork song called Lion Song from the Volnikura album, which has like, I don't think sounds anything like Fanfare for Some Bad Bitches, but in my mind it does because it has this kind of like minor major switcheroo going on. That was really inspiring to me. So I think that that's like where the some of the harmonic material came from. Um, I often do take associations like that are not super literal. I think that I wish that I wrote music that was as thoughtful and I guess slow, right? And careful as Bjork does. But in reality, I write total space cadets spazzy stuff. So I think that that was kind of my initial inspiration, and then the original version of the piece was actually for three horns and three trombones, which kind of had this interesting echo effect. There's this like kind of bubbly element that happens throughout the piece with all these like staccato notes that go up and down, and mostly that was played by the horns when there were three horns, which had this like really interesting kind of bubbly effect. So I was doing my best to translate it to brass quintet in a way that didn't feel heavy. Um, and to some extent, I think it does still carry some heaviness, and it kind of is a different animal for brass quintet. But yeah, it sort of evolved from that point to have more different sounds. It kind of had this cohesive sound when it was for horns and trombones, in these like two kind of opposing, almost antiphonal groups, even if they weren't spaced apart. Whereas in brass quintet, it kind of has more like a, I guess, soloistic or group concerto sound, I guess.
I'd agree with that. And I think, you want a piece that's going to be challenging, and this piece is challenging, but I also feel like you can really tell when you're playing music of someone who understands brass instruments. So it's like, it's to me a good mix of, it's a challenge. You want to, do the work and get the payoff for that work, but it isn't like completely non-idiomatic, right?
Yeah. That's my goal. So thank you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, challenging in an idiomatic way is the best. So we love playing it, and it's been really popular too when we perform.
Awesome.
So we should be playing it again this winter, when we visit Eastern Illinois and then Stephanie's school, University of Northern Iowa. So, do you have anything that you're working on right now that we can look forward to? Any compositions you're working on, or are they top secret?
No, not top secret. A project that has been I have been unintentionally stretching out for a while, that I'm close to finishing is a set of duets for Carol Jansch, that is like, she wanted them available in two different keys so that she could play with a trombonist on F tuba and then kind of have the same feeling playing on C tuba with either an F tubist on the higher part or a bass trombonist or euphonium or something. So um, they're kind of like duets for like all of the low brass combinations available. And that's been an interesting project to work on because the range consideration is a little bit more strict than when I'm kind of writing for the trombone and all the weird parts of the trombone. So I'm really excited for that to come out. And I've just got a few more things to tie up on that end. Yeah, that's kind of the big one. Not too long ago, Amy and Dan Cherry of Balaton Brass premiered a piece of mine called Collective Consciousness, that is like an interesting six movement, short little six movements for trumpet and trombone, that I feel like has some fun elements too.
Awesome. Thank you for writing more duets.
Yeah,
I
somehow that's become my thing.
low brass players are hungry for that stuff, man. I feel like people ask me about that all the time. And so to write things that are flexible, especially like as a teacher, that is so helpful. And it's not even, just the others, those combinations that you're talking about as well are so cool because, we have a quintet, right? So we'll do a recital of quintet music, but when we go and visit schools, it's nice to have like a trumpet and trombone thing or a horn and tuba thing, in order to give like a little bit more variety. So I feel like people really, really want that these days.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Those projects kind of started around the similar time and kind of wrapped up, or kind of are wrapping up around similar times. So it's kind of funny that I feel like I was approached to write two kind of larger sets of duets at once, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because that'd been kind of a while since I had done 20 tricky tunes and kind of been in that duet world.
cool. Well, Zoe Cutler, thank you so much for chatting with us today. And we're excited to talk about Fanfare for Some Bad Bitches, but also about this other stuff that you've got cooking right now. We will be looking out for that. And do you want to share your website, socials, or whatever so that people can find this music for purchase?
Yeah, my website is zoecutler.com, Zoecutler. And that's kind of the place to find the stuff, you know? So thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Jessica, for having me.